Welcome back to an all-new edition of the BWI Daily Recruiting Show. Ryan Snyder joining us as always here. I'm Greg Pickel as we kick off another week of Penn State spring practice and review a lot of recruiting news. Ryan, T. Frank, and I, who's of course doing our producing today, we're down in Baltimore for the latest Under Armour camp. And at the same time, Penn State was hosting a number of visitors on campus, both over the weekend and also earlier this week. So Ryan, let's start with the Under Armour camp, a loaded event as it always is, down at Calvert Hall College High School, which that always is a mouthful for me to say, in Towson, Maryland. But it brought a lot of talent to the region. It was great to be back at a camp like that in a much more, I would say, normal setting compared to what it used to be like. And we were able to talk to a lot of players and prospects and watch those guys on the field. And, you know, I'll open up the floor in the bidding for wherever you want to start with this. We talked to numerous guys, and it was, as it always is, full of talent. If anyone's not aware of what that camp is, it's basically one of many regional events for the Under Armour All-American game. They invite a couple of kids, usually after each stop. They'll invite more along the way here as that All-Star game gets closer, and they've also, of course, been inviting guys previously before these camps even started. So, Ryan, let's just start with your opening takeaways, the top things you learned while we were down there, and other than, you know, it can still be very cold and windy and otherwise snowing at times in late March in Towson, Maryland.
Yes, that was the only negative of the day, just from the perspective of not just because we're out there freezing all day, but I do feel like it kind of impacted the way some guys performed. You know, I felt like when we were watching quarterbacks, wide receivers, DBs at the end of the day, you know, everybody was just a lot of misthrown balls and, you know, guys that, yeah, you know, if it's 75-80, I think they're performing a little bit better. I think a lot of guys were kind of just worn out by the end of the day, which I think it got colder as the day went on. I don't think I'm exaggerating that. I think you guys would agree with that. It was miserably windy as well. So, but man, standouts of the day. So there's a lot of places to start. I think the biggest thing that grabbed my attention was what I reported Sunday night and, you know, talked about briefly on the live show yesterday, which is Tony Rojas admitting that Penn State is his favorite school, right? I mean, we don't see many guys nowadays admit that a school is truly their favorite. A lot of top threes, a lot of guys saying, you know, maybe down to these two, something like that. But, you know, outright saying that Penn State is your favorite school was, you know, something I wasn't really expecting to get out of Tony, because my previous interactions is, you know, he's usually a more quiet guy, although it was good. And that's like maybe the best thing about Under Armour camps is finally putting faces to names and getting to know guys. So that was a positive. But I think a lot of guys stood out. I mean, do you want to go like positionally through it? What's your thoughts?
Sure,
You just want me to rumble through guys? I mean, we could start with quarterbacks. You know, Stone Saunders, the 2025 Bishop McDevitt quarterback, took home MVP honors, and you know, from what I saw, it was pretty well justified. I thought he was pretty accurate in the accuracy competition. From what I saw, I didn't get to see everybody, of course, but you know, he had a good performance there. I thought Michael Van Buren, the St. Francis 2024 quarterback, performed well. He's already, I believe, he earned an invitation to the Under Armour game, right, Greg?
I believe he has, yes.
Yeah, I believe so. So, you know, I thought he performed well, and of course, he was just coming off a visit to Penn State the day before, and I had positive things to say. A long way to go with him, though. I don't think, you know, just from a recruitment perspective and an evaluation perspective, I think just, you know, let's see how he performs with a whole season under his belt. Of course, he didn't start initially last year, and then he came in that De La Salle game, which we're watching highlights of now. You know, was excellent. It was like 16-19, 4 touchdowns, and on an ESPN game, right? That's a hell of a way to start your high school career, especially.
If I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure that. Yeah, I'll just cut you off real quick. I'm pretty sure that performance is what led to him earning that Under Armour All-American game invite so soon in his career.
Mm-hmm. No, it led to a ton of offers too. I mean, I was just going through it the other day when I was writing a story. I thought he got like 6 offers within like 3 days of a game, which, you know, you see that happen. Don't get me wrong, but it's not every day that boom, you just blow up like that after one game. But Michael's a great kid. I really enjoy talking to him. Stone's a great kid. I've talked to both of them many times, and you know, I think Penn State's still evaluating Stone. He's just coming off his freshman year, so they don't have to rush that one there. Van Buren, of course, is going to be entering his junior year, so they've offered him already, and we'll see where it leads down the road. We'll go to running backs. Marquise Williams, of course, another Bishop McDevitt player, earned MVP at running back. I think one of the negatives of the day for me was just the way. Well, first off, the camp kind of got started off a little later, and that's how it always is with check out or
Right.
check in. It's always hard, but the one negative for me was just it was hard to watch running backs and linebackers because of when it was taking place. Their one-on-ones for the most part overlapped with offensive line, defensive line one-on-ones, and anyone who goes to these camps, like those O-line, D-line one-on-ones are pretty much like the biggest event of the day. So that's where everybody's really focused, and that made it hard for me to watch a lot of the running backs. I mean, Penn State really isn't really involved with many of the running backs there. I have talked to some people at Penn State recently about Marquise, and they have kind of said that maybe he's looking a little bit better than I think that they initially thought. So I'll be curious to see if they kind of step things up. Marquise has always been a great player. It was just always just size. They've always been a little bit concerned that he's too small for the Big Ten level. So. Do you have any thought? I mean, did you get to watch running backs much? I don't. I think we were
Not
focused on.
really. No, to your point, I mean, I think that Ryan and I and everyone else there typically, as Ryan said, focuses on offensive line and defensive line one-on-ones. But it was even more important, I felt, for us because the only Penn State commit on hand was Anthony Donka, the 3-star offensive lineman from Virginia. And so we were zeroed in on that pretty much and didn't get a chance to check out many of the running backs and linebackers. We'll get into that in a second. But yeah, the only thing I would say, Ryan, is that, the quarterbacks had a brutal day to try and be throwing in. And I think that we would have saw some better performances. But ultimately, if you go back and listen to any of our podcasts from previous camp recaps or things like that, or if you are a longtime recruiting site member and you read recaps from these, I mean, very rarely do you see a large swath of good feedback about the quarterbacks. This event's just very difficult for that. Guys are throwing the receivers they've never met before, and conditions typically aren't ideal. So it's not a great surprise to come out of that saying that there are really only a couple quarterbacks worth talking about, but the running backs and linebackers, certainly we wish we would have saw more of them. But yeah, we'll see where they go with Williams. To your point, yeah, it's going to be a matter of whether he overcomes the size questions. I don't think there's any question about that. Let's move on to receivers and tight ends. I don't know if you had any thoughts on those groups. There was a London group on hand, a group from England rather, on hand, and Peter Clark was a tight end in that bunch that I thought had a good day. I'm not sure he's on high Power 5 level, at least not at this point, but someone to keep an eye on maybe for a lower Power 5, Group of 5 offer down the road, something like that. But, we watched plenty of the wide receiver defensive back one-on-ones, and I know you have a story up now on one of the defensive backs, but before we move on to the linemen, anything strike your interest from that group that Penn State fans should know about?
I would say, I mean, Paul Billups won MVP. He's from West Branch, Virginia. Penn State has offered him. I thought Mekhi White had a decent day. He's another 2024 player who's actually coming up to visit Penn State this upcoming weekend. So the way it's separated for O-line or for wide receivers, DBs, is it's like two separate sides of the field. And I was kind of focused on one side. So those are a couple of the guys I saw. I watched Emilio Agard. Of course, he's a defensive back. I was really focused on him a lot. Some other guys, a little more defensively focused just myself, just because Penn State has more offers out there. But Billups, I thought, definitely deserved that MVP honor. He made multiple nice catches and in the before one-on-ones, doing the gauntlet and other different drills. He certainly got after it. He's got some good size on him too. So does Mekhi White. I didn't realize how big Mekhi is when I really got an up close look at him. I mean, he seems every bit of. I think we have him at 6'3", and that looked pretty legit to me. So be curious to see how White takes off here, because he's really kind of taken off. I don't want to say more than I expected. I mean, I expected him to be a good prospect, but added some quality offers from North Carolina and I think it was Virginia Tech, West Virginia, a couple others. And there's some SEC schools checking him out as well. I think Ohio State he visited already. So just two guys that kind of grabbed my attention. You were watching other guys. Did anybody really kind of stand out to you, Greg? Or
Yeah, I think you covered a lot of them there. Yeah, I think you covered a lot. I'll just touch on White quick. I had a chance to catch up with him. We'll have a story up at Blue White Illustrated by the time this podcast comes out. So I'll just cover that real quick in an audible audio sense, rather. He's going to Florida State April 9th. Of course, you mentioned he's going to Penn State this weekend. He's going to Ohio State April 16th, Virginia April 23rd. And a lot of schools have big interest in him, including Penn State. And, at this point, it seems like his two main points of contacts are Coach Terry Smith and running back Coach Jaywan Sider. I'm sure he's also having plenty of chats with Taylor Stubblefield as well. But he is definitely going to be a guy to keep an eye on here moving forward, because schools certainly, I think, continue to show even more and more interest in him. We have him at 6'3", 182, number 209 nationally in the On3 consensus, and already a 4-star in the class of 2024. So, yeah, he has my eye, no doubt about that. And yeah, it's kind of the same conversation we had with the quarterbacks. It was not a great day to be out running routes really either.
Mhm.
And we saw a lot of passes thrown behind
There
guys and over the head and things like that. Yeah, go ahead.
I did forget there were 2 guys I did wanna mention. Lex Cyrus, Susquehanna
Right.
2025 kid, that was my first time really checking him out. He's got a UConn offer already, and, I always like to try and keep an eye on the Harrisburg kids. Obviously, that's an incredibly fertile area for Penn State, so, I didn't realize kinda how shifty he is. He's got some good speed to him. Still just a freshman, right? So there's a long way to
Yep.
go there, but, Penn State's definitely keeping an eye on that young man. He certainly grabbed my attention. And then Ryan Manning as well from St. Francis. He's been up to Penn State, I believe, once already, maybe twice. He was another player who, just good hands. I didn't really see him dropping too many balls, and we saw plenty of drops. And that was something we saw a good bit of going through one-on-one. So just a couple other guys that grabbed my attention that I wanted to mention as well.
Thoughts on Anthony Donko? We got to see him in action for the first
Mhm.
time. He is a big guy, and I thought that he was putting some unfair, not unfair is not the right word, but he was playing some tackle in this camp as they were kind of moving guys down the line in terms of who was getting reps. That's obviously, I don't think in his future at Penn State, maybe it is, but he looks
We'll
certainly
see.
more of a guard, at least at this point. So, but I thought he held up well when he was matched up against guys that weren't as quick and things like that. And I thought he graded out pretty much as we expected, right? I mean, I think it's clear that he's a big kid and he carries that weight pretty well. But he has
Mhm.
some areas for improvement, like almost every single offensive lineman recruit ever, unless your name is
Yeah.
Landon Tangwall or Alex Birchmeyer or something like that. But I
Yeah.
was glad to see him in person for the first time. And I think that, it's not hard to see why Penn State made a decision to take him as early as it did.
Yeah, I thought he had good feet, but he needs to work on his technique. Like use his hands a little bit better. I thought that was good. Originally, I was kind of watching some drills. I was trying to get a better feel for his feet. But when I watched him in O line, D line 1-on-ones, I thought that was better than what I originally thought when watching some of the earlier drills. So I think Penn State wants him to be a tackle. They really want him to be a tackle. Whether he is a tackle or not, we'll see. I mean, truly, I think listing him as a swing guy right now is probably the more accurate way to put it, which you can say about so many guys, right? So I
Right.
think Penn State's they always are recruiting those swing guys. So, but I thought he held his own. I mean, going up against Mason Robinson, Mason's a quality player who I think will end up at Penn State, and I think you saw a little bit more of the O line D lines than I did because I was trying to watch Tony Rojas while that started. I mean, from what I saw, it was pretty even between those two. Like, I mean, Mason got him a couple times, Anthony won a couple reps. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely, it is. Yeah, I mean, I
Okay.
think that and this camp setting can be a little bit weird too. Guys maybe have never experienced this before, or certainly have never experienced it against the kind of caliber of player that this invite-only camp draws. So I think that once Donko, and I know T. Frank talked to him afterwards, and he's well aware that improving in the pass protection part of things is an area that he wants to concentrate on for the rest of this offseason. But I felt like he got better as his opportunities to be involved in one-on-ones went on. So I
Hmm.
think maybe early it was an adjustment, and it was, kind of like one of those wow moments, like, whoa, this guy's not what I typically see in pads, or I've never really done this before and know what I need to do. And then you can tell too, the other guys who have been through this before are much quicker out of the gate with that. So no, it
Hmm.
was a good group. It was definitely, I think, out of all the camps we've gone to, probably one of the better ones
Yes.
that we've seen. I'm not even going to try I think you nailed this DeMatha offensive lineman's name before, so I may try and let you do that. But he is definitely an interesting guy to keep an eye on here.
Yeah. Um, Olu, I don't know how to pronounce his
Okay,
first
well,
name.
we'll
I
go
just
with
call him
Olu. We'll start
Olu
there. Yeah.
Babalade,
Yep.
from the Matha, and man, he's really taken off, and I think he's somebody that Penn State seriously needs to consider offering. And man, he was dominant throughout the day. One thing too about Anthony Donko, to circle back real quick, is that Anthony was part of the final five. Which like
Right.
at the end of these O-line D-line 101s, they kind of pick out the best five O linemen that the coaches thought, and the best five defensive linemen, try and pair them up, and each of them gets like a 2 reps or something like that each,
Yep.
and that's how they end it. So it was good to note that Donko made that, and I thought he deserved it. I think there's a lot to work with, and getting to see him up close. We didn't really know a lot about Anthony when he committed, and I got to talk to him. I knew he was a great kid. I knew there was just so much to love off the field, and now getting to see him on the field. I think Penn State fans should feel good about that commitment. There's a lot of clay to mold, right? And that's kind of what
Right.
you're trying to do if you're Phil Troutwine. But sorry, to go back to what we were talking about, Olu Babalade, I believe it's Babalade. I apologize, Olu, if that's not it. But man, he did anyone beat him all day? I don't think. I thought I saw 4 to 6 reps for him, and he dominated every single one of them. So, and I think he ended the day going against Desmond Umazulu. I believe that pronounced that one correct. And Desmond won MVP honors, and he shut down Desmond as well. So, of course,
Yep.
Olu was named one of the O line MVP. So was Antonio Tripp, excuse me, who of course
Yep.
has since gone on to commit to Miami, and Penn State. Looked like Penn State was going to push hard, and then it kind of felt like once they got Birchmeyer, and then they kind of moved a little bit of a different direction. But Antonio's an awesome kid, so I was really happy for him. And McDonough just continues to produce products, so that was good. But
Yep.
definitely, I thought it was the best O line D line group that I've seen at least the last couple of years, for sure.
Yeah.
There's no denying that. I mean, we can just kind of roll right into the D line. I mean, there are so many awesome names there, from Umazulu to Deshaun Womack, Sadir Mitchell. I mean, Sadir Mitchell had some things to say. You want to talk about that a little bit? Because that kind of surprised me a little bit.
Yeah, so I just, again, to give everyone a peek behind the curtain here, like when these drills end for each position group, they come over and gather as a group, and the organizers announce the camp MVPs and any Under Armour game invites. And usually one of the coaches, or maybe a former NFL player or college football star on hand, will give a brief speech, and then after that they do interviews. So time can be a little bit limited. And now this was the first group that we were able to talk to, Ryan, but they weren't as cold as I think the running backs and receivers and defensive, or I'm sorry,
Yeah.
the receivers and defensive backs were at the end. They just wanted to get out of there. So there were a lot of guys, heading out to their families' vehicles or coaches' vehicles, however they got there, before we even had a chance to talk to them. But still, with as loaded as that offensive line, defensive line group was, we had to be a little bit strategic in terms of which guys we wanted to talk to. And Sadir Mitchell seemed like a no-brainer to me. And now I have about 4 minutes of interview tape, and that doesn't include much about Penn State, because he said there's not really been much communication there at this point. So that did surprise me, no question about it. He did put them in a list of top schools he put out not too terribly long ago. 4-star defensive lineman from Bergen Catholic, really big kid. In fact, Penn State leads in the recruiting prediction machine in on 3 right now, but doesn't sound like that will be the case long term. So that was interesting. He's a guy that, again, a really big prospect. Is being recruited by a number of schools, 6'4", 345. Thought he had a pretty good day, but yeah, he says Penn State hasn't really had much communication with him. So that's a development of note along
Well,
the defensive line tackle board.
they had a lot of communication with him at one point, and it just feels like I don't know, maybe Penn State cooled, and I mean, Penn State's in communication with him. I'm still think we can say that, but
Yeah.
it feels like Penn State maybe cooled a little bit, and maybe that has turned Sadir off a bit. So I still wouldn't be surprised if he makes it back here at some point, because he's been here a lot already, and I thought he had a ton of interest. But man, now he has all these SEC trips coming
Yep.
up here in the next couple of weeks that we on 3 reported on a couple of weeks ago. So man, I'm just surprised. I guess I'm not surprised, because I knew Penn State was trying to see where things progress there. I mean, I felt like Penn State wanted to kind of see if he lost a little bit of weight, because I think there was people concerned that he was getting a little bit too big. But he did move well. I mean, and I did think, from seeing him and compared to other times I've seen him, especially last summer, that he has lost some weight. And I know he was also playing injured last season as well, which probably, when you watch his film, he maybe moved a little bit slower than what was fair. So I'll just be curious to see how that one plays out, because that did surprise me. I thought that he would at least talk about Penn State in somewhat of a light, but to just say that not really interested, or slash not talking to them anymore, that kind of perked my attention when you told me that. I'll roll in just a couple other guys quick. Joseph Mapui, definitely really good looking prospect. I'll be curious to see what happens there
Yep.
because it sounds he's not going to be eligible at Archbishop Carroll last year. I don't know how much that's really been reported on. I don't know. Maybe I should be talking about it yet, but he's not going to probably be at Carroll next year because of his age. Of course, he came over. I believe it's from Congo, where he came over from. So I hope he's just able to land at a good prep school or something like that because he has a really good future, and you would hate to have to see him take a year off or anything like that. Really awesome young man. I really enjoyed talking to him more, and man, there's so much to work with. I didn't realize how tall he is. I knew he had good length. I didn't realize to what length his length was, if that makes sense. Ernest
6'8",
Willer.
222 we have him at.
Yeah, Ernest Willer from St. Paul's High, definitely a guy that I think Penn State's going to be recruiting hard. Ari Watford is a 2025 prospect from Salem. Man, watch out for this guy. I mean, he already has great offers, so it shouldn't be surprised. I believe he has a handful of solid SEC schools. Penn State's one of them as well. But he looked like a great looking prospect. I thought Dylan Fontes from Canarsie up in New York was a good looking prospect that Penn State is interested in. I don't believe they've offered him yet. Check me if I'm wrong, Greg. I don't think they have. But
No.
he's going to be a player that I could see them potentially offering. He's a 2023 guy. That 2023 board is just so deep, man. We've been talking about that for the longest time. That I think good players like Fontes would maybe in a lot of other years would have an offer from Penn State by now. But a lot of good players, man. Umazulu looked great. I thought Mason Robinson, did more than hold his own. Just how deep this defensive end board is. It makes sense, right? That there was a ton of defensive ends at the Mid-Atlantic Baltimore region because Penn State
Yep.
thinks that's one of the deep boards in the region this year.
Yeah, no question about it. And, again, it's funny because these camps, you can always tell when it's a good year in a region or a good cycle coming up in a region based on how many guys at these camps already have Penn State offers or Ohio State offers or
Mm-hmm.
Michigan offers or SEC offers. And there was a ton of them, especially along the defensive line. We hit on Rojas earlier, moving into the linebackers. You're listening to the BWI Daily Recruiting Show with Greg Pickel and Ryan Snyder. We're currently recapping the Baltimore Under Armour camp that we all, Ryan, T. Frank, and I were able to attend over the weekend in Towson, Maryland. And we talked a little bit about Tony Rojas. I think that's the biggest development to come out of this for Penn State. I don't think it's even close. I mean, there were some kids that talked highly about Penn State and want to get back to campus and all that. But to me, this guy, I had not seen him in person. He was maybe a little bit thinner than I thought he was going to be. But other than that, he looks like he can do just about everything that you want a linebacker to do. His rating is justified. And Penn State's going to have to push here because there are some other schools still pursuing him heavily. But, to be in this situation at the end of March is certainly, I think, just about all Penn State fans could ask for beyond a commitment.
There's one guy we forget to mention for DN real quick. I have to circle back. Dominic Nichols, who's going to be a really important player for Penn State. He's a 2024 guy. I already think Penn State's kind of the favorite there. His aunt went to Penn State. And he still a very raw prospect, but man, his speed and agility coming off the edge. I had to mention him quick because as I'm looking over the D-line list, he was one of the guys that, as far as Penn State connections go, really, another guy that just, man, his speed and off the edge was like, oh, okay, I get it here. And I think On3 has him rated pretty good too, which was good because they had him as a 4-star last week, and Rivals has him a 3-star. I'd be curious to see what 24/7 does, but I really feel good about that one. Penn State loves him. To go back to Rojas, I've seen Rojas a couple times myself, so I kind of knew size-wise what to expect. I mean, I think people still kind of expect, bigger linebackers, and Penn State just is looking for guys that really know how to play in space, and that's what Tony does best. He ran that 4.5 previously, 4.4 shuttle. I mean, the guy can move and make quick cuts and keep with running backs and probably slot receivers as well. And that's why he is so highly regarded. Another great sign for Penn State. I do feel like we'd be, we're not giving Clemson its due probably because Clemson is now a very serious player in this recruitment. And the fact that he's going back to Clemson here, what is it, next week or this upcoming week, speaks to the fact that how much they have moved up his board just from offering, a handful of weeks ago. So 2 visits to Clemson in less than a month is certainly something to keep an eye on. But again, he is still calling Penn State firmly his favorite. So let's see where that stands after that visit. And of course, Rojas is coming back to Penn State as well. I wrote about that yesterday. I think fans know what it is. We'll keep that keep that behind the paywall for our subscribers, but he will be back here in the near future. Anybody else at linebacker? I'm trying to think, man. Who are we missing? Oh, Aaron Childs from Good
Yep.
Counsel. You had a good talk with him. I thought he was a pretty good player. Caleb Spencer from Life Christian, he worked out as a linebacker. There's been people wondering if he was a safety or a linebacker. I definitely feel like linebacker is the right move there. How about Kofi Taylor Barks from
Yeah.
England? Sorry, it's a terrible try. He was a pretty good player. I hope he was a really nice kid too. I hope
Yep.
I think Michigan State offered him already, and he
Nevada
just
as
of
well.
course
Yep.
yeah. So just it was a solid group of linebackers, but I mean we'd be lying if we said we got to watch them much, man. Just
Right.
and even with that said, like there's only so much you can get out of linebackers from these camps. They run
And
well.
running backs
We
for
watch
that
them.
matter. And running backs for that
Mhm,
matter. Yeah.
mhm. So
Right.
that's kind of why they just if you have to pick, you have to go towards O line D line, but yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that Tony Rojas moves well in space. We kind of knew that going into it. I think Aaron Childs is going to be the real deal.
Yep.
And there was some guys here who grabbed my attention, but I'm not quite sure if they're Penn State level yet. The linebacker I would say probably about half the linebackers there were more G5 guys than Power 5 guys.
Yeah, I think that's right. Aaron Childs, NIL, will be a part of that recruitment. He said he's learning more about it, and he's a young guy, of course. But, as we talked on the show before, if NIL doesn't impact schools significantly in a good or bad way in 2023, and it will. I mean, we'll see to what level, but by 2024, it might be the most talked about thing around. So just a quick news note on that. Nate Bauer has a story up it's over at bluewhiteillustrated.com, but Penn State announcing a partnership on Tuesday with Altuis, I believe is pronounced. That will bolster their comprehensive NIL program, according to a news release. So we'll learn more about that. But Penn State continues trying to make steps in the right direction on that front. Closing out to look back at the Baltimore camp, I think that it was a pretty good group of defensive backs. I got the chance to talk to Antonio Cotman, and I think that he definitely has a strong interest in Penn State. But I think I got the sense, Ryan, that number one, he was cold. He was ready to get out of there, as was I, quite frankly.
We
So
all were.
we had
We all
something in
were.
common
Yeah.
there.
Mhm.
But that one, if I had to have an early sense, I think it could be the first heads up battle that we see between new Virginia Tech head coach Brent Pry and
Mm.
longtime Penn State defensive or head coach rather James Franklin. Duke, Boston College are schools that are in the mix there. Arkansas and Ole Miss are SEC programs he wants to check out. So I think that's going to play out a little bit too. I get the feeling that he's going to take his officials during the fall, which a lot of guys that we talked to, Ryan, it was weird. I really expected more guys to have a plan for their official visits, considering it's almost April, but a lot of guys did not. But from talking to Cotman, I got the sense that he wanted to maybe cut down to 5 in the summer, take all 5 official visits in the fall, and then go from there.
Yeah, I think a lot of guys, I think they have more plans than they want to maybe say. I've
Right.
just kind of noticed that over the years. But yeah, I mean, I think once we get to the end of April, you'll start hearing about that stuff more. I think guys know what they want to do. They just don't want to maybe say like these are the 3 schools that are going to get officials because they want to always, give that
Yep.
mindset that everybody's still very much involved. So a couple of defensive backs. Dante Lovett got MVP offers. He's a guy who's been up to Penn State a lot. Not sure if Penn State's going to offer him or not, but I feel like he's a pretty good player. I think a lot of schools just always kind of wanted to see how fast he can run. So I'll be curious to see what his 40
Yeah.
time is out of that because we will get his 40 times then eventually once they open that stuff up. Braden Lee from Flowers High School down there in I think it's Maryland. He's teammates with Umazulu. He's a legit player. He earned an MV or he earned an honor. He earned an invite to the Under Armour All America game, and he is going to be the real deal. I thought maybe he was one of the best defensive backs there. They gave it to Emilio, who was fine, but to me, just watching guys, I thought Braden Lee was very impressive. Tavon Nelson was a player Penn State just offered. I think was it the day before he was at Penn State.
Yeah.
He was down there. He performed well. I think Rushan Tung, I believe is how you pronounce it, from Chesapeake, is a player. Like the Mid-Atlantic region isn't incredibly deep at corner for 2023, but if I were to guess who would maybe potentially be one of their next offers, Tung would probably make a lot of sense there. I believe he's from where's Chesapeake? Is it? I think he's from Maryland, Chesapeake,
Yeah.
Maryland. There's a bunch of Chesapeake high schools, but yeah, just a couple of guys. KP Price was another one too. He's from Calvert Hall. He visited Penn State the day before. guy we watch closely. And Cameron Chadwick, too, Immaculata from New Jersey. He's supposed to visit Penn State this weekend. I talked to him about that a little bit. But solid group. I mean, I think Emilio deserves to be a top player. That he got beat a couple times, but I mean, everybody kind of did. It was just miserable experience there at the end of the day.
You're listening to the BWI Daily Recruiting Show. We are wrapping up the portion of the show from the Under Armour camp in Maryland. You can continue reading about all of the players who were there, their takeaways, thoughts on Penn State, when they will visit it more at bluewhiteillustrated.com. It's $1 for 1 year of access. Ryan, let's roll into a couple, maybe not so bits of good news for Penn State, starting with Neo Avery. Decommits Sunday morning from the Nittany Lions. He committed, of course, back on New Year's Eve at the end of 2021. Had the chance to talk to him. He was on hand watching the camp, even though he's injured and expects to be back for his senior season. But all told, I think that this is as straightforward of a decommitment as you can get, and it's not the first time it's happened to Penn State in this class. Like Matthias Bourne, he felt like he committed too soon without taking visits. Penn State prefers its commits to not take visits, of course. So the meat in the middle there is to decommit, go check everything out you want to see, and then decide again. And I think Penn State is 100% still in the running for him, but he wants to go see some other programs and make sure that he made the right call.
Yeah, he wants to be recruited. I mean, how that happens to so many guys. Commit too early. You feel like you have your decision made. You commit too early. Schools kind of stay in your ear. And you miss that, right? I don't want to call it necessarily attention, but you feel like you're missing out on something. So I expect him to visit a bunch of SEC schools. Sounds like Georgia's still very much in the mix, and they were a school that he was very interested in previously. So I'll be curious to see what happens there. Look, I mean, just look back at the numbers, man. When guys decommit, it does not normally end well for Penn State. They've had Matthias Barnwell recommit, Micah Parsons recommit, and I'm sure that I'm missing some guys maybe before James Franklin, but there haven't been many. So we will see if Avery bucks that trend or not. But this is a loss. This was a player Penn State really wanted, and they were able to talk him into playing defensive end. I'm curious to know if that had. Maybe he's thinking more about tight end, and Penn State's really kind of thrown their cards on the table. What do you think, Greg? You talked about that?
No, I asked him, and he basically felt like he can make more money in the future playing defensive end than tight end, which I think is 100% true. So, no, he said that he felt like when he broke his hand back during the earlier part of the season that he wasn't really being maximized at tight end because obviously he couldn't really catch the ball with a broken hand. Mm-hmm. So he flipped over to defense, and schools seemed to be interested in that, and it was kind of full speed ahead from there. So, no, I just truly do believe after talking to him that this came down to he had open conversations with Penn State about wanting to make other visits. Penn State, we all know where they stand on that. And I think they kind of agreed that, okay, if you're going to decommit and go take some visits, we are going to recruit you. But at least we all know where we stand at this point. So time will tell there. But you're right. Usually doesn't end well.
No, I mean, he played a lot of quarterback for good counsel too. Like, I mean, he's all over the place with different positions there. Quarterback, I think he played split out at wide receiver, tight end, and of course, then he switches over to the defensive end and has a hell of a couple games there. And James Franklin was in attendance for one of them, which I believe he told me he had like 5 sacks in the game Franklin was there for. So we will see, but I think this one hurts, and I think guys up in the Lash aren't very happy about it. I was actually tipped off he actually decommitted Friday, and there was some talk about it, but I wasn't exactly sure if it was legit, I guess you would say. And then, of course, it happens like right when we're at the Under Armour camp. So wish I would have probably been on top of that one a little bit more. But thank you, Greg, for covering that. Of course, you got to go out in the car, right, and sit in the warmth. So I think it worked out for you.
It worked out fantastic. All right, we're coming down the home stretch on this BWI Daily Recruiting Show at the end of March, the last episode of March. You can find all the daily episodes at youtube.com/bluewhiteillustrated with T. Frank, plus wherever you get your audio. Let's just hit on some weekend visitors quick. We're going a little bit longer here than we usually do, but it was a busy end of the month here. Penn State had a number of guys on campus over the weekend. You caught up with a few of them. I will let you open the bidding wherever you want as we look at those guys quick.
Yeah, Mari Snowden is probably, in my eyes, the top guy who visited this past week, at least top 2023 guy. I think he remains an important player for Penn State and definitely one of their top safety prospects. Probably not maybe at the very top of the board, but I included him on our hot boards for a reason. I mean, he's certainly a take for Penn State, and they've gotten him on campus twice now, so that's a great sign, and I would expect him to get him back in the summer. Where he's going next is kind of still seems to be up for debate, which may not be a bad thing for Penn State because he has baseball season coming up. Which actually, I think that alone was a major reason why it was good to get him back up here, because his baseball schedule is really going to impact where he can visit in the coming weeks. I think Carl Parker from Texas, had a good talk with him. Just kind of curious to see how hard Penn State pursues him more than anything. And I think they like him. I just need to learn. Sorry, I tapped my mic there. I need to learn. Is he? I don't want to say is he a take, but just kind of where's he at on their board? They have a good chunk of wide receivers who have visited previously and who I thought were ahead of him, but now that he's up here, I need to get a better feel for that. But he's very interested in Penn State. I think he's very interested in Texas as well, though. Texas has a big lead in the on 3 RPM, and I think that's fair. Of course, I think Texas took Pitt's wide receiver coach, I believe, and he had a very close relationship with him. I'm don't have the name off the top of
Brendan
my head,
Marion.
but
You are correct.
yes.
Yes.
Good work. Yeah. And that was that. Yeah. Exactly. Thank you. I knew I should have had his name. But that was a big change there. And then with Texas offering and that close relationship, Texas will probably be the favorite if they go all out there. Penn State offered Arville Reese from Glenville. I'm expecting a bunch of Glenville kids to actually be back here tomorrow, Wednesday, which is March 30th. I don't believe Arville's coming, but I think Bryce West will be out here. He's a stud of a player for 2024. But I if he doesn't end up at Ohio State, I'd be pretty shocked. But West is, I believe, ranked 4th right now by On3's ranking. So I mean, he's on pace to be a 5-star player, and I think he will be here Wednesday. But solid group. They offered Tavon Nelson, of course, from Canarsie. Want to get a better feel for that, but I think this upcoming weekend and then the weekend after that are shaping up to be among the biggest when it comes to visitors moving forward.
Yep. Penn State also hosted 2023 receiver Justin Brown on Monday. Had a chance to talk with him. We'll leave most of that over at BWIIllustrated.com, where, again, you can sign up for just $1 for 1 year of access to On3 Plus content and the Lions Den message board. But certainly got the sense, Ryan, that he's another guy to watch. That receivers board is loaded with uncommitted guys that Penn State wants. We know that Rodney Gallagher's at the top of it. He told me on Monday night that he has locked in a couple visits, but he tweeted out a couple visits, but he has not yet set a date for Penn State, but he'll be back. I wouldn't worry about that at all. He's trying to sort things out now that his basketball season has ended. And so, but it starts with him, but there are a lot of other guys on that board. It'll be really interesting to see how many they want to take and how this all plays out.
It's going to be a loaded board when you offer almost 50 guys, right? I
Right.
mean, that's what we've seen with Penn State in recent years is they're handing out offers like candy. So, and with Rodney, I mean, Rodney needs to go visit other schools. Like that's what he should be doing right now. He should be going out.
Right.
He knows what Penn State has to offer. He's been here how many times now? That's why I think I firmly feel like he's going to end up here. But he needs to go out and see the Virginia Techs. He needs to go see Ohio State hasn't offered him yet, but he is going there. And it was at West Virginia, I think, was is the visit this upcoming weekend. So I would expect him to go to Notre Dame. I expect him to go to Michigan as well. But yeah, that's a loaded wide receiver board. There's a lot of guys to like there, but I would still expect Rodney Gallagher to be a Nittany Lion when it's all said and done.
We've reached the finish line of this edition of the BWI Daily Recruiting Show. For Thomas Frank Carr, who did awesome production work for us today, Ryan Snyder, I'm Greg Pickel. We'll catch you next week. Remember to join us, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, for the latest Penn State news, notes, recruiting updates, and analysis. We will talk to you next week.